Today, we're going to jump into a story that was written over 100 years ago, but honestly, it feels like it could have been written yesterday about our Instagram feeds. We're unpacking Stephen Leacock's hilarious short story, With the Photographer.
So it all kicks off with this one line. It sounds so simple, right? I want my photograph taken. Our narrator, a guy who's about 40, walks into a studio with what seems like a totally straightforward goal. But yeah, it's not going to be that simple.
Because this one little errand completely spirals into this massive, hilarious identity crisis. And what's wild is that this story from 1913 just absolutely nails our modern obsession with filters, with Facetune, and with this constant pressure to create a perfect version of ourselves.
All right, so let's set the scene a little. To really get why this is so funny, we have to kind of picture what it was like to get your picture taken way back in 1913.
So imagine our guy walking in. It's 1913, right? He's probably wearing a pretty formal, dark, three-piece suit. He's got one of those super stiff, tall collars that look incredibly uncomfortable. The whole point back then wasn't to look cool or relaxed. It was to look serious, respectable, businesslike.
And his reason for being there is just as serious. This isn't some selfie for social media. He wants a photo for his friends to have after he's gone. He literally says he wants it to reconcile them to his loss. So there's this real weight to it, this desire to capture a true, final version of himself.
But that very serious, very solemn mission immediately smacks right into the bizarre world of the photo studio. And this is where we get this amazing clash between a regular guy who just wants to be seen for who he is and this artist who wants to completely change what he sees.
Okay, so you've got your two main players, and they could not be more different. First, there's our narrator. He's patient, he's trying to be helpful, and all he wants is a picture that actually looks like him. But on the other side, you have the photographer, who's described as this gloomy scientist type. He couldn't care less about reality. He's on a mission to create some idealized, perfect image.
And you can feel the power imbalance right from the get-go. He makes the narrator wait for an entire hour, and by the time the photographer finally comes out, our guy already feels like he's done something wrong. He feels like his totally normal face is some kind of major inconvenience to this great scientist's work.
Now we get to the photo session itself, and this is where things go from just a little awkward to completely and utterly absurd. The photographer's vision starts to go way off the rails.
It starts with him saying the narrator's face is quite wrong, but then it just gets crazier, with these physically impossible instructions. I mean, droop your ears a little more. How in the world is a person supposed to do that? You can just tell. He's not directing a human being. He's trying to physically sculpt him like a piece of clay.
And here's the real irony, right? The photographer is trying to mechanically construct an expression, but he has zero clue what makes an emotion look genuine. You can't just command someone to look sad. Real sadness, it's a feeling. It's this softening of the muscles, a kind of inward pull. The eyelids get a little heavy. It's something that comes from the inside out, not a pose that you force from the outside in.
And the instructions just get more and more ridiculous. He's basically telling him to contort his body into this completely inhumane shape, twisting his features like they're spare parts you can just move around. It's hilarious, but it's also kind of dehumanizing, The narrator isn't a person anymore. He's just a collection of broken parts that need fixing.
And finally, our narrator just breaks. He's had enough. And in this moment of pure, raw frustration, he stands up for himself and for his face with this amazing speech. He's basically saying, yeah, it's not perfect, but it's mine.
And right at that exact moment, that peak of genuine frustrated life, the photographer takes the picture. He totally misreads the situation, thinking this angry outburst is the perfect animated expression he was trying to create the whole time. The timing is just perfect.
But oh no, the horror show is not over yet. The narrator leaves, and then he has to come back on Saturday to see the proof. And this is where the story's attack on photo editing gets really sharp.
When the photographer shows him the picture, he literally has to ask, is it me? He does not recognize the person in the photograph. It's so changed, so alien. And the photographer's calm, quiet response, it is you. It's just so chilling and so funny at the same time.
Then, the photographer proudly walks him through all the improvements. He's retouched the eyes. Then, get this, he's completely removed the eyebrows using some fancy Delphi process. The mouth? Oh, that was all wrong, couldn't use it. And don't worry, he can just remove the ears entirely in the final print. He has literally taken the narrator's face apart and rebuilt it from scratch. At this point, the narrator is just completely defeated. He's heartbroken.
He tells the photographer to just go ahead with his brutal work, but he calls the picture a worthless bauble. He totally rejects this fake image and just leaves the studio in tears, mourning the real portrait he'll never have.
So, the big question is, why does this story from 1913 still hit so hard today? Well, the parallels to our own world are just impossible to miss.
Really, when you boil it all down, the story is this brilliant takedown of the fight between being your natural, authentic self and this pressure to create some kind of artificial, perfect version. It's all about accepting who you are, flaws and all. And look at this. It's honestly mind-blowing how little the technology has changed in spirit. The photographer's Delphi process for getting rid of eyebrows? That's just a 1913 version of a digital brow filter. Removing the ears with a sulfide process? That's basically the great-grandfather of face-tuning apps that let us warp our entire faces. It's the same thing. That brutal work is the social media perfectionism we swim in every single day.
You have to remember, Leacock saw this coming. He was writing this right when image manipulation was just getting started, and he perfectly nailed our anxiety about not being good enough. His story is this timeless, hilarious warning about chasing that perfect image, and that's an obsession that has only gotten more intense in our digital world.
Which really just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In the story, the photographer forced his idea of perfection onto the narrator. Today, our phones and our apps do the exact same thing. They suggest a filter, they offer a tweak to improve how we look. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, when we accept those changes, who's really the artist creating that image? Is it you, or is it the algorithm?